All right. It's already August. We're a few weeks away already from the start of the NFL season. We were talking last week when we were brainstorming episodes, for how we were going to structure the next month. And we were like, shoot, we actually don't have anything to come up with because we have to get into our predictions before we eventually go with our playoff prediction episode that, of course, drops right before the NFL season begins there in the first week of September. So here we are with the AFC, NFC East previews, full divisional preview here. As a reminder, this is something that we've done for several years, but we've kind of changed it up. I believe last year we started doing it a little bit differently, where we're kind of looking at the division as a whole, broadly looking at it, giving our predictions of how the division's going to stack up, but not necessarily giving record predictions or playoff seeding. That is all going to come at our final episode before the season drops with our full prediction. So this is a look at the division, a look at the teams, seeing where they stack up against each other and what we think of them. So really looking forward to that. But of course, we got some news to dive in before we get to those divisional previews. But Mark, anything you want to say on that before we touch on some of the stuff that dropped?
I think the exciting thing for me, and I hope our viewers get this as well, is this is an opportunity for us to spend that like 10 to 15 minutes, on each team throughout the next month and just say, hey, remember this guy got traded, or remember they signed this guy, or remember they drafted this guy. And hey, look at that stretch of the schedule. That's going to be something to really keep an eye on for this team. Kind of that high-arcing overview, so we feel good going into with you, our viewers, and always we love hearing you guys' thoughts. If you're a diehard of a team we talk about and you think completely the opposite, or you completely agree with us, we always love when you reach out to us and let us know. But it's that kind of 10,000 foot overview of what we're feeling for each team. I felt like I relearned so much when I was going through this and making my notes. And it also just fired me up because starting with the NFC East and the AFC East, the Easts are so top heavy, and then the bottoms can fall out really quickly in each division, it looks like. So can't wait to break it down. And I will say, what a fun month we have ahead of us doing all of this, and also with all the news. We're going to start with a couple pieces of big news. Obviously, these next 4 shows are really, really fun. So participate, let us know, respond to us, and call us idiots, or call us, or get, hey, if you think we missed something big with your team, let us know, because obviously we always love to respond to that.
Yeah, and a good reminder there to always engage with us in the live chat. We will, discuss and bring those up as those come through. So good opportunity for that as well. But diving in to some of the news, big broadcast media acquisition, merger, whatever you want to call it. ESPN purchasing the rights to NFL Network, to NFL Red Zone, to NFL Fantasy Football. They're going to apparently merge it with ESPN Fantasy Football. So I don't think they're planning on doing 2 different platforms. They're going to kind of merge them both together. But a huge acquisition there, as in return, the NFL gets a 10% equity stake in ESPN, which is sizable, but also curious timing, given that, honestly, ESPN for several years now, many have viewed it as a collapsing and falling apart, platform. It was the leader in sports, right? The worldwide leader in sports for decades upon decades. And then we've got shows like Around the Horn and, PTI that are, slowly dissolving, as well as several others. But this is a huge get for ESPN, probably a massive lift to their programming slate now. They're projected now to get more NFL games on top of it too. So a big win for ESPN. I don't know how much of a win this is for the NFL, but they were kind of forecasting this, Mark, with a lot of the change-ups that they did on NFL Network and kind of trying to cut back on things. It seemed like they were looking for a way out there. And so this is their way to get some money for their product.
Do we know if the NFL network is going away? Like, you know what I mean? Like all of like the actual network now that ESPN owns the main properties, is it just going to dissolve as a network, or are they still going to have daily programming? But like I'm an NFL network employee, but technically my bosses are ESPN.
Yeah, I think it's gonna work like that, all the
Okay.
reporting that I've heard so far. Now, of course, any of this could change, like, ESPN obviously can decide whatever they wanna do with this, but everything that's being, put out there is
Yeah.
that they're maintaining Red Zone as is. Now, this isn't gonna go into effect until next season anyway. So, this official,
We'll have
programming,
a
it's gonna
year of
take
kind of
some
figuring it out.
transition time. Yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Because you
but
have
Scott
good people
Hansen
on
is
the NFL
still
network.
gonna host, and it does seem like they're going to keep NFL Network as it is currently. Obviously, going to change shows and perhaps personnel with those shows. So that's a big
Here's
thing to look out for.
ESPN's
But
what you mentioned, the decline of ESPN is look at the decline of CNN, MSNBC, of all of those type of things, right? There's a change, there's a massive change happening. If you're watching us right now, you are participating in the change that has happened. We are actively participating in the change. Now, no one's saying that we're taking the viewers away from ESPN, but
yeah,
in a sense, if you commit any time of your day to, like I do, Pardon My Take or Colin Coward, which I do every single day, you are no longer participating in what ESPN dominated 15, 20, 10 years ago. My day was 100% dedicated to ESPN radio, ESPN programming. But now I get my clips on Twitter, and I go and I pick and choose the voices I care to listen to. You know what I mean? I pick and choose those things. I choose Colin Coward. I choose Pardon My Take, right? And then I will choose some stuff from a guy like a Nick Wright that I enjoy. Dan Patrick, obviously, who's still one of the great voices for the next year and a half while he's still in the game. You find the things that you like. Kyle Brandt, I love watching his clips.
he's
You know what I
awesome.
mean? As a Bears fan, so things like that. And so what ESPN, I think, is looking at, and with the NFL, you said it's a loss for the NFL. I think if I'm the NFL, it's a win in a lot of ways. The NFL is probably losing money on the NFL network, right? Like
Yeah,
the
I
NFL
don't think I
makes
said it was
money.
yeah, I don't think I said it was like a loss for the NFL so much
Well,
as
I can't
that
remember what you
I
said
don't know.
exactly.
It was more about is the 10% equity in ESPN
Well,
worth as much, because they're giving away a lot of proprietary content there. But I mean, obviously they know the numbers better than I do, so they
yeah,
must have made a calculation that this is worth it. But it just
yes.
seems like
And they get
10% of a
out of
stake
having to
in a
manage. But they get out
yes,
of having to
correct.
manage the day to day. I worked for a TV company. You worked for a TV company for years. The day to day cost of producing content, it's not getting any cheaper. And if it's not bringing in the dividends, if you're not subscribing to NFL Network, if you're not subscribing to Red Zone, which I think less and less people are, if it was making them money hand over fist, the NFL is not getting rid of this, right? I mean, I think that's the key, right? And if you're
Right.
ESPN, while you may be giving up a lot to get something that may not be worth it, what you're doing is you're eliminating a competitor. And Red Zone is still the end all be all of that unique product. And so you get to say, hey, listen, we're going to have a built in product plus Monday Night Football. It keeps us competitive with the Foxes, with the CBSs that have multiple games, right? Have multiple,
Yeah.
where
And this
ESPN
paves
gets
the
one.
way for getting
Yes.
standalone games outside of MNF,
Yes,
which is
exactly.
huge. It's massive for them. I mean, ESPN knows
Exactly.
NFL
They're
and
getting a
football
Super
rules.
Bowl, ESPN, for the first time, I
Mhm.
think, in like a couple of years. They finally got that. That was part of getting Joe and Troy, was like, let's
Yeah.
get legitimate here. Let's get a Super Bowl. So I think on the surface, to me, it's a win for both parties. Because again, I think it's a win for the NFL to say, where NFL's is in the business of selling product. So we
Yeah.
sold a product, right? And then the NFL's also, and then for the ESPN, it's you've eliminated a competitor, right? You now own there. So even if you're watching Good Morning Football in 3 or 4 years from now, ESPN's getting the profit. If you're watching, you know what I mean, an NFL Network show, ESPN's getting the profit. as opposed to we're losing because we need to get your eyeballs on us. And then I
Yeah,
will
I think
say,
NFL's like, you guys have the infrastructure. You guys have done this for decades. You can run our
it's not going to go
operation
to
better than
waste.
we can run
Yes.
our operation.
Yes. And then my final point in it is, okay, so the third party in all this is us, the viewer, right? I can sell myself on ESPN Plus. I've had ESPN Plus for a long time. I can sell myself on spending again a little bit extra on ESPN Plus to have Red Zone and all of the exclusive content that you get with the NFL Network. It was hard to sell myself on the NFL Network and buying the NFL Network, right? Because you really only want it for the season. Uh, you're not getting
Yeah.
anything else in that type of thing. You feel like you're paying for Red Zone, and like that's pretty much it. So as a consumer, I have to go less places for my content. And that's a big deal, I think, to us in this world, especially people our age who are still of the generation where we remember, no, it was just on TV and you had the channels. Younger people going to a million different streaming services it's their life, it's what they've known. So for us, I think it's again, Andy, boom, boom. You're picking and choosing, and it's one less thing to have to pick and choose from. I have ESPN Plus, so I know I'm going to get my Monday Night Football, and now I know I'm going to get Red Zone when it ends up there. I think it makes it clean. It makes it easy in that way. We'll see. If ESPN ruins it, it's on ESPN. They have the pressure to not ruin it, just like they have to do with the inside the NBA. They're getting Shaq and Kenny and Charles and Ernie. There's a lot of pressure. ESPN, don't fumble this. But again, what did ESPN do with that? What are they doing with this? They're eliminating competition.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're in ESPN's not in competition necessarily with Fox and those things anymore. They're in competition with Amazon, Netflix. You know what I mean?
And they've got to move to a digital product.
Yes.
Yep. No doubt. All right, transitioning to some other news before we get to our preview. Shedeur Sanders has been named the starter for the Cleveland Browns. I just figured we could touch on that real quick before we get, because our AFC, NFC North previews are going to come in a few weeks. So want to get out ahead of that. I mean, it wasn't overly surprised, to be honest. Kenny Pickett has been dealing with an injury. Dylan Gabriel got hurt, and they don't really need to see much of Joe Flacco. So this is Shedeur's time to shine, and he's got to put his money where his mouth is here.
It's now the must-watch game of this weekend that's not your game. Like, obviously, the Bears are my number one. If you told me I could watch one game. Number two is the Cleveland Browns game because, like it or not, and whether it's fair or not, he is a massive talking point. And listen, we said it from day one when he tumbled and then ended up in Cleveland. And we're not the only ones who said this, but everyone said it. He's going to get a chance, right? This might be the chance, right? So the pressure is on. Don't blow it. If you're a first-round pick and you have a bad preseason debut, it's not the best thing in the world, but you're going to get 10 more chances throughout the regular season and the preseason, all that, right? If you're a fifth-round pick and you've got a lot of guys you're competing with in the depth chart, now Tyler Huntley was just added to that depth chart. The pressure is on. So can't wait to watch it. And when we get to that AFC North preview, the Browns' starting weapons are not great. Their depth is a lot of guys I have no idea the names, who they are, and what they can offer. So I don't know he doesn't have Travis Hunter. I'll put it that way. So good luck to him. But you're also going up against guys who are second, third stringers too. So I hope for the best for Shedeur, but either way, if it's a disaster or if it's a star performance, it gives us a ton to talk about and digest.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really does. And he's been in the crosshairs of, both vitriol and excitement from fan bases and just from general media since well before the NFL draft. But of course, him falling has now shined the spotlight a little bit more on him, and there is that added pressure. I will say too, selfishly for myself here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I was really excited to watch Will Howard take the majority of snaps, see what he's got. He fractured his hand. He's not going to be playing this preseason. A brutal, brutal situation.
When did that happen?
This happened earlier this week.
Damn, I didn't see that news.
He practiced. Yeah. It's not going to require surgery. There's a slight possibility he'll be back for the final preseason game, but honestly, I kind of doubt it.
At that point,
that's
don't
a bummer
even risk it.
Because this was his one chance
to get reps,
to show what he had. If ideally you have a healthy Rodgers all year, or Mason Rudolph's is going to be playing right, this was his only chance, because ideally they're getting a first-round quarterback next year, and that's going to be the person with the focus in the preseason, not Will Howard. So real
that
bummer
sucks.
There. Hope for him to get some live reps, but we'll see if he's able to get that final one. All right, let's get to the NFC and AFC East. We'll start in the NFC with the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles. And of course,
Eagles,
the Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, and the New York Giants.
NFC Championship game is in this division.
It is. It very much is. So I don't know how you want to tackle this, Mark. If you want to give an overview of the division, if you want to talk and start with one of the teams, we can do that as well.
Yeah. I'll go an overview, and then I'll start with Philly. All right. And then you can go, and then you can go Philly, and then you can pick a team, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. It might look at the NFC East. Obviously, you have the NFC Championship game in this division. As I look at it, to me, it is a division that is top to bottom, maybe arguably a top 3 division in football of the 8 divisions. When you have the Super Bowl champs and you have the NFC Championship team in Washington, you have 3 quarterbacks that are above average. 2, I think, are obviously top 10 quarterbacks, and 1 is the definition of average. And then with a Giants team that is going to be really interesting at quarterback, I think where the NFC East struggles, in my opinion, as far as saying, hey, they're the best division in football, is the bottom. I think has a chance to be could get really ugly. I think there's interesting storylines with the bottom, but would it shock me if 1 or 2 teams in the NFC East end up with 5 or less wins? No. The top is very, very good, but I think the bottom could end up very ugly. I don't expect there to be multiple 5-win teams in the NFC East. I think my gut feeling from looking at it is the Giants and the Cowboys are going to play better than maybe you'd think on the surface. But one injury to those 2 teams, and it could be a disaster of a season really, really quickly. They're thin as far as star power goes in that way. So let me start with Philadelphia. As I was looking over Philly's roster and I was looking at everything, obviously they were 14-3 last year, extremely dominant after a slow start. Remember, they got off to a fairly slow start. It was the win against the Green Bay down in Brazil, and then they lost a couple games and then went on an absolute tear. Obviously, the quarterback situation is extremely solid. They have a top 10 quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who's played extremely well in the playoff runs we've seen him in. You have a extremely good running back, probably the best in football with Saquon Barkley. You have the best offensive line in football. The only question mark when you look at the offensive line, Dan, is a 6'6" guard from Alabama who was drafted in the 3rd round, who did play a little bit last year, Tyler Steen, but he's a mammoth of a guy. He's going to go in at guard. The other 4 positions are surefire, really, really talented and or Hall of Fame level guys like Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. And so the offensive line is really, really special. Defensively, it's a really good mix of young guys in their prime with Davis and Carter. And then you have guys who are absolute studs at the linebacker, the 2nd level with Bond and Dean. And then Cooper DeJean, a back end and a secondary that I think is really talented. So they're good at all 3 levels. They have one of the top 3 defensive coordinators in football with Vic Fangio. So when you talk about a defense that is poised to be a top 5 defense, you talk about the best offensive line in football. Where the weaknesses. Well, here's the couple that I'm going to point out. I don't know if they're glaring weaknesses, but again, you're kind of trying to peck at the shield that is extremely powerful and strong with the defending Super Bowl champions. Wide receiver number 3, Jahan Dotson. Last year, 19 catches, 216 yards, no touchdowns. Really thin behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So one injury, a tweak hammy, and one of those guys has to miss 3 or 4 weeks. The depth at wide receiver is concerning. And then I would say the other question mark I have is another new offensive coordinator. This time, Kevin Patullo. He's been the passing game coordinator for this team since 2021. So Jalen Hurts and this team has familiarity with him. It's not bringing in a completely new person. So I'd expect there to at least be some continued continuity, at least with the passing game for Jalen Hurts. And that's huge, obviously, because let's be honest, that is, if Jalen Hurts has a weakness, it's overall passing game. And it's not even that much of a weakness. He's certainly still a top 15 passer in the NFL, in my opinion. And then I will say, Dan, a couple interesting stretches I really want to point out. We're going to know a lot about this Philadelphia team if they have a Super Bowl hangover weeks 1 through 5. It's a tough start. You play Dallas at home on banner night. That's going to be emotional. It's a division rival. And then you're at KC week 2. You are then home against the Rams, who gave you the toughest battle in the playoffs last year of anyone. Then you have at Tampa, who beat you in the playoffs 2 years ago, has your number. I think actually Tampa beat them in the regular season last year. And then you're home against Denver. That is a really tough way to start the football season for the defending champs. Where is your easy win? Maybe at home against your division rival when you're emotional banner night. The next 4 games are really, really tough. An improved Denver team at home early in the year. And then, to me, the final thing is weeks 16 through 18. If they can get through that tough stretch, the middle of their schedule is really easy and workable. And then it's week 16 at Washington, week 17 at Buffalo. Those 2 teams are going to be playing for a lot. And then week 18 home against Washington. So Washington, Buffalo, Washington. The NFL did no favors for the defending Super Bowl champions. So my gut tells me they're going to be really good. They should be a favorite in the NFC. But are they a 14-win team with that schedule? Maybe they take a step back. I still think they will be competing for the division title. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think a lot of those same thoughts that you outlined there too. One of the other areas of concern for myself, we all know Cooper DeJean is already shaping up to be a star, can play anywhere on the field, but they did lose a lot from their defensive backfield. And so I'm curious, both depth and starters, and Darius Slay and Adoree Jackson. So there are questions, or I said Adoree Jackson, I meant Isaiah Rodgers and Avonte Maddox. Like they really thinned out and kind of had to rebuild, and they only drafted, that safety Makuba. So, it's really going to be, can they stay healthy? Mainly Cooper DeJean. I feel that if he is lost for any significant amount of time, then there's going to be some real questions, because yes, this defensive line is dominant. Also, defensive line that lost a lot of reinforcements with Brandon Graham leaving and Josh Sweat no longer being in house. So, is this team going to be able to weather any injuries in their key units? You already mentioned the wide receivers. And so now I'm bringing the defensive backfield and even the defensive line into the mix.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big question mark. But I still trust this team, the way it's run. Got to give credit to Nick Sirianni. He has been able to not have a season-long implosion with this team. Of course, we've seen a couple years ago where they fell apart late in the season. But he's put out quality play when you look from week 1 to week 18 in an NFL season. You mentioned the beginning of their schedule, and while I'll agree, I'll also point to what you said earlier, which was last year they had a brutal start and still were able to go 14-3 and win the Super Bowl. So I'm not sure how much it'll define them. I agree that ending with Buffalo and Washington is going to be huge. And so a lot to be seen there. I'm not sure. It felt like a team that was winning, and I hate to not give credit, but it seemed like a team that was winning and kind of chugging along despite Kellen Moore last year. And so I'm thinking that, maybe there's going to be a lot more carryover from last season offensively than we may think. And I'm certainly hoping that that's the case. Jalen Hurts is now a veteran in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's got this continuity with his offensive line and those receivers. So I think it's really going to be them guiding, Patullo, who also is familiar with them,
Run the ball. Just
and
run the
and,
ball.
and run the ball with that dominant, which they also got AJ Dillon and they have Will Shipley. Like they have a good backfield of depth there behind Saquon Barkley. So it'll be interesting to see how they shape up. But I definitely will have them, at the top of this division competing for it at the very end.
One more thing I just wanted to add here quickly. It's been a quiet offseason for them.
It has.
Last year at this time, remember,
champ.
who was it? Who was it? Reddick? Who was the defensive end who was holding out?
Yes, it was Hassan Reddick, who had just traded for.
And then they end up shipping him to the Jets. And it was just this kind of weird mess. And it was very, very public and ugly. They've avoided that. They've had a very quiet offseason. So I think that's going to play into it for Philly. Yeah, I think again, we're going to know a lot about this Philly team after week 5, depending on where they're at. If they're humming and they find themselves 4-1 or 5-0, holy crap! Like this team might just be that type of a juggernaut and be able to go back to back.
Yeah, no, they could be really scary. I want to go to Washington now.
Okay.
Because, it's the natural progression. It's the other team that was with them in the NFC Championship game. This is a team that I feel could be really, really good this year. They already surprised everybody with the play of Jaden Daniels. No surprises there. The big question mark is going to be, can they get this thing done with Terry McLaurin? Because if they can't secure Terry McLaurin, then I do have real questions, because he really is the glue that allows Jaden Daniels to have that freedom behind the line of scrimmage to run. When you take away a threat like that, defenses can really key in and make life difficult for you. So get the deal done with Terry McLaurin, Washington. This is a priority, the top priority for them. So keep in mind, everything I'm going to say about this team is with having Terry McLaurin on the team come the beginning of the season. But, they went out and they got Deebo Samuel. They got a lot of depth and quality starters, too, on their offensive line. Laramie Tunsil was really a good get there. They got Von Miller, who, obviously at this point is not an every down player, but definitely a good spot rusher that they can deploy, strategically. And they got just tons and tons of depth along that defensive line. So they really, really helped fortify that. Then they spend that early pick on the other tackle, Josh Connerly, and then, get the corner Trey Amos and then Jalen Lane, another wide receiver, to kind of help enter into the mix. So their early picks, I thought, were really solid. They didn't lose anybody of major note, in my opinion, other than, Jeremy Chin, who's, good safety, and De'Ami Brown, the wide receiver. But really, I just felt that this team all around got better. And we're talking about a Jaden Daniels who now has a full off season of already knowing the team, already being acclimated to it. So I think this could be really, really dangerous. And I think they could give the Eagles even more of a run for their money than they did last year, where it was getting, kind of dicey when we're talking about going into that back half of the season. We're like, oh man, Washington is really impressing. Are they going to be able to actually pull this out? I think this year it's going to be a similar situation, especially, as you mentioned, with them playing each other twice in the final 3 weeks. And Washington has Dallas sandwiched in there. And then right before that stretch is the Giants. So 4 divisional games they end the season with. Very, very, very big stretch for Washington there. That's going to determine it for them. Those final 4 games is really where it's going to be, unless they're, 13-0 going into that final stretch. That is going to matter tremendously for them. A relatively, I would say easy schedule overall for them with some difficulties peppered in, but they definitely have an opportunity to bank some wins early, Mark. And I think it's going to be a collapse would be very surprising to me. I think we're going to see a very similar, if not better, output from Washington than we saw last year.
I'm with you. They were 12-5 last year. I don't see a collapse. It's another team, though. I do think I see maybe a slight step back as far as win totals goes, but they may actually be a better team.
Right.
Yep. Jaden Daniels, 69% completion, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,500 yards. He ran for 891 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was fantastic. He was the first time we've seen someone who could say that looks like Lamar Jackson. Like that looks like Lamar Jackson.
This may be the only time we can really get you to speak on this without more information on the table. So I'm just curious, now that we've had that full season and now that we're into the off season, do you wish the Bears got Jaden Daniels knowing what we know now?
No, the only thing I wish is that the Bears had fired Matt Eberflus and I was starting, if I was going back in time a year right now, it'd be Jim Harbaugh or Mike Vrabel as the head coach of the Chicago Bears right now going all in. If they had gone all in last year with a new head coach and Caleb Williams, I think Caleb's numbers would have been a little bit better. And I think you would have seen a team that won maybe 2 or 3 more games because they wouldn't give up the Hail Mary like they did. They'd be more polished, more disciplined. And you'd see a team that would be such a dark horse this year, everyone picking them as like as a huge dark horse. And we'd argue you'd have more of an argument like, hey, Jaden got the better of Caleb, but this is Caleb's year to get it back. You know what I mean? They add.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's still way too early to be determined. I'm still very high on Caleb Williams. And I still think when you look back at it historically, he was the number 1 overall pick for 2 years in a row. Caleb, he was the guy that everyone's like, he's the guy, he's the talent. And I don't blame the Bears for saying, hey, that's the generational guy that everyone's talking about. Let's go get him.
Yeah, for sure.
And if Jaden Daniels would have had Matt Eberflus for a year, like what would Jaden Daniels have done? He would have gotten sacked as many times as Caleb. It would have been ugly. He would have had 3 offensive coordinators. Now, maybe he would have still been able to put up slightly better numbers because he's a much better athlete than Caleb. But again, then
more difficult division, definitely the NFC
yes,
North.
And we'd be saying is Caleb. We'd be saying Jaden Daniels is Justin Fields. He's just an athlete. Can he throw? I think there'd be a lot of that. So no, I don't regret it yet. I don't. Now, give me another 5 years, and if the Bears are on a new head coach and a new quarterback, and Jaden Daniels has got a Super Bowl ring, I'll be like, yeah, they missed on a guy who could probably overcome generational.
I think after this year, you'll be able to tell who's going to have what's going to be better.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think by the end of this year, we'll know if Caleb is the guy who can hang with them. You know what I mean? I think Caleb Williams will be the starter for the Chicago.
By the way,
I think Caleb Williams will be the starter for the Chicago Bears this time next year as well. Now, whether that is also meaning there's a veteran in camp as well who Ben Johnson is pushing Caleb with, or if it's
agent.
Or if Caleb is just that guy and he's just the guy. So they're not going to – I don't think they move off of Caleb no matter what happens this year unless it's that ugly, disastrous. I don't think this can happen. We'll talk about the Bears later. I will say, listen, it's impressive. One of the things that I'm concerned about with Washington, because, again, a lot to like. They draft the kid Josh Cornelly Jr. from Oregon in the first round as a tackle to go with Larry Tunsil. Offensive line was a concern with Allegretti, with Tunsil, with Cornelly Jr. You think now it's not necessarily a strength, but it's no longer a weakness. You can say, hey, we have an offensive line that's pointing in the right direction who we believe is going to be improved. Obviously, the Terry McLaurin contract it changes the discussion if Terry McLaurin's not on this team. Let's get to that if it ever happens. You have a solid tight end in Ertz, who's at the end of his career, but still a really, really great safety blanket for the young quarterback. So let me get to some of the concerns. Again, who emerges as wide receiver number 3? You have Terry, you have Debo. Is it Noah Brown? Is it Luke McCaffrey? Is it Michael Gallup? None of them are bad options, but who emerges as that slot safety blanket for Jane Daniels. I think they would like it to be Luke McCaffrey, but Noah Brown and Michael Gallup are no slouches either, right? It's a nice group. So that's something to watch for. Deebo Samuel last year, 51 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 136 yards rushing, his lowest since 2020. He only has 1,000 yards or more once in his career. So people
he gets banged up.
You got to remember what you're getting with Deebo. You're getting a weapon. You hope in total he gets 1,500 yards, right? With rushing, receiving, that would be insane. That would be like he turned back the clock. All I'm saying is if Washington fans are like, if Terry doesn't sign or whatever, it's okay. We have Deebo. That's not okay. Not okay. You do not want Deebo Samuel going into the year as wide receiver number 1. Ideally, he's wide receiver number 3, and you're just moving him all over the field as a chess piece. And offensive coordinator. Why am I blanking on his gorgeous face and his sterling good looks and
of Washington?
Offensive coordinator,
Nice.
former head coach for the Cardinals, the good-looking guy who's the offensive whiz kid.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury. Thank you.
Yeah.
You hope that he sees him as like we're gonna have fun with this, right? But it's a concern, right? And
sure.
I don't think Deebo's playing 17 games. Like it's just not going to happen. There's nothing in the last couple of years that says to me Deebo's going to play 17 games. So when you look at Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Michael Gallup, you're going to need those guys to step up. Maybe more than one of those guys to step up big time for this offense. And finally, Dan, the defense has got names like, Bobby Wagner, Von Miller, Marshawn Lattimore. Yeah. None of those names are in their prime. And I would argue they're all past their prime considerably. Bobby Wagner is still putting up, at least recently, fairly good numbers, but another year of Bobby Wagner, another year of Von Miller, Marshawn Lattimore. Obviously Daron Payne is in his prime. He's a very good player. Will Harris is a very good player on the back end, but they're going to rely on some guys who I don't think are playing 17 games either on that defense. Now, luckily, they have a defensive head coach who doesn't have to worry about the offense. So you're going to hope that with the draft with young guys, new names step up. But as far as the marquee names on that defense from a 10,000-foot view, we're looking, that's an old roster. And then I would say the point of the schedule to keep an eye out for if you're a Washington fan, if you're betting the over on the win totals, is 5 weeks 4 through 8, I think are going to be really interesting. They're on the road 4 of 5 games in a 5-week span at Atlanta, at the Chargers, at Dallas, at KC. And your home game is a Monday night game against a Bears team who's going to be highly motivated to play very well against you because of the embarrassment that was the Hail Mary last year. And the hype of Caleb Williams versus Jane Daniels. So again, that's a really interesting stretch. It's not a murderer's row. It's not like it's Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore. It's not murderer's row, but it's not the easiest stretch in the world. And again, 4 of the 5 are on the road. So if you're nicked up, if you're missing a Bobby Wagner and a Von Miller and Deebo tweaked his hamstring, weeks 4 through 5, that's going to be a prove-it stretch, in my opinion, for them. And then obviously 2 of the final 3 being against Philadelphia. So that's the key stretch to look out for Washington. Can they survive weeks 4 through 5 and come out 3-2 in that stretch? That would be a huge win if you're a Washington Commanders fan.
Yeah.
You want me to go next?
Yeah, no real objections there.
I'm gonna take us to the big D, to Dallas. So why don't we both talk really quickly about the Micah Parsons situation? What I think we've learned from this is that Jerry now seems as though it's like it's now gone a little bit. Like over the last decade, 15, 20 years, Jerry's been an eccentric character who likes to do things his own way, but we can sit there and go, well, that's Jerry Jones. Now it feels a little bit like, if I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I'm pleading for them to move Jerry into an overseeing role,
Mm-hmm.
but no longer just like the guy's in his 80s, and it's now getting like the stories aren't funny anymore. The press conferences aren't like
He's
it's
digging his heels in so hard and
and
getting
Dan,
so
it
defensive that
feels
he
like
is trying to
grandpa.
posture himself as I'm still in charge.
Yes,
Don't mess with me. And
it
it's
feels like
getting kind of, you know,
it almost feels like one of the kids tried to take away the keys to the car,
yeah.
and
Yep.
he's going and he's fighting back. It's almost it feels like there's infighting, and it's getting a little Biden debatey. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Where for the first time you're seeing it going like, what is that? Like what is that? Like where th-
I mean, I think I was at that point when he was talking about glory holes a couple years ago in
well,
his press conference and didn't know what he was
yes.
talking about.
Yes, but so when it comes to the Micah situation, from everything I've heard from guys like Kevin Clark, um, who was just on Pardon My Take today, and from people, other people close to the situation, Diana Rossini on the Herd the other day. Everything I've heard, it seems a little bit like Micah's the first one of these big name guys who's not playing Jerry's game. From what it sounds
Yeah.
like is that Dak shook the hand and did the handshake deal. Shook the hand and did this handshake deal, knowing that Jerry, what he wants is to sign the contract the day of week one. And so he steals all the headlines going into that Eagles banner night. And Mike is the highest paid guy. But in order to do that, and so what Jerry wants is he wants a performance. He wants the camp to go in front of the mic and every day give quotes off and talk about the Dallas Cowboys. But he wants it to be a wink, wink. Let me be Vince McMahon. Let me be this is entertainment. But we shook hands face to face like men. And I told you I'm going to make you the highest paid guy. But it seems like Micah's not playing that game. Micah doesn't want to play that game. Micah just wants to get paid and let's move on. Jerry, it sounds like there's a way Jerry does things, and it's proven that he signs the big deal the night before, and then all is well. But in order to make that all work and everything to be kosher, you got to be practicing, you got to be participating, and you got to trust that Jerry's going to get it done. It sounds like Micah's pushing back a little bit, and that's why this is getting uglier than in the years prior with the other big names getting big deals. And listen, if I'm Micah Parsons, I don't blame him because honestly, yes, you make a lot of money being a Dallas Cowboy. And yes, there's no state tax, but you're not winning jack shit. And you're not winning jack shit in the near future at all. If you sign a 5-year deal where you're getting now paid the highest, you know you're not winning jack shit. You can't even win your division the next 5 years, most likely with Philadelphia and with Washington ahead of you. You're just not. And so maybe Micah truly does want out. Maybe Micah really does want to have a chance to win and get paid. And Jerry certainly doesn't want that. Jerry wants Micah Parsons on his team, you know?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing too is they've struggled. I feel like they've struggled to draft outside of, the first round and second round. So they've struggled to build depth for many years now. That's bitten them multiple times. But we're at a situation too where these, first round and second round picks that you're getting are performing well. And so you have to pay them. You have to pay the CeeDee Lambs. You would think, pay the Micah Parsons of the world, Trayvon Diggs. You paid Dak Prescott a contract that at the time was not commensurate with his play, I would argue.
Yep.
But you kind of boxed yourself into that corner. And so now you're very, very top heavy with your contracts, but you have no depth because you just haven't been drafting very well. And that's also on Jerry, of course. And so you're putting yourself in this position where the good franchises would pay Michael Parsons because you drafted him and now you've got a great player and you keep him. But they put themselves in this spot now where you pay Micah Parsons, but you're not any closer, it seems, to really seriously contending. And they've been in this weird malaise for many, many years. and they're kind of just floating around. And unlike Pittsburgh, who's also doing the same, Pittsburgh has star power on their team.
And
They
they're
at least
not
have the
noisy.
dudes. They just haven't had the quarterback, and, the offense in general. They just haven't had the quarterback. But for Dallas, the problem has just been building they just haven't built a team. And I feel like we're going into this year with the same situation, only now we're getting a rookie head coach who we don't know anything about. And so I have major concerns with the Dallas Cowboys. I thought they would kind of fall flat. They surprised me a little bit last year overall. They dealt with, a lot of turmoil, and given that they finished 7-10, that's kind of where I predicted they would finish, but they got there in a much more impressive way because of the injuries and everything like that. I could see a very similar output with all of their players this year.
Yeah.
Just because of the unknown of the coach. And I just don't believe in this offense. And I don't believe in the depth they have on this team. They really can't weather an injury. I mean,
Dan,
George Pickens was a great addition.
I agree.
He needed a number 2 desperately. I thought that was a great move by them. But outside of that, I don't have any trust in the build of this team.
Right now, they're in the running for top 2 or 3 hardest teams to predict what their season will be, because Schottenheimer, as you said, the new head coach. I mean, the guy, if Schottenheimer was fired when McCarthy was fired, like they cleaned house, Schottenheimer would not get an offensive coordinator job. He wouldn't, because he wasn't getting offensive coordinator jobs. He was getting like assistant coordinator jobs in college. I mean, he's been all over the map, and he comes from football royalty. But Dan, it's just been a huge question mark. So listen, Dak missed 8 games last year, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He wasn't on historic pace anyways. I think Dan is letting the dog out here really quickly. Yeah, that's all right. You let Remy out. He's Well, that being said, with Dak Prescott, he has a history, and I'll save this for Dan to come back. So I'll come back to Dak. So let me move on. The defense, obviously, without Micah Parsons, it's a whole different type of defense. You have Diggs, who's a very good corner, but he's coming back from an ACL. We don't know exactly what his status will be week 1. And will he be the same guy when he comes back from an injury? Yeah, Odigizua and Dante Fowler can rush the passer. Those are solid pass rushers. But who else on defense without Micah Parsons and without the question on Diggs? So I don't think they're going to be an elite top 10 defense. They don't have an elite offensive line. They don't have an elite running back. Javonte Williams listed as their 1. We talked about that when we did our running back ranking. So I got questions at running back. I got questions at offensive line. Tight end, wide receivers, quarterback, all average or above average. That's something. Coach, no idea. Offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, no idea. And then the schedule. Listen, the schedule's interesting. Oh, here, Dan, now that you're back, I want to bring this up. So my interesting point with the Cowboys with Dak Prescott is this. Dak got injured in 2020, and then in 2021, so 2020, he played 5 games. In 2021, he came back, had an almost MVP season, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He got injured in 2022 then. So he's been injured, great season. And then injured in 2022.
Yeah.
Only 12 games. And then in 2023, huge year, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Then 2024, last year, injured, only 8 games, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So he's on pace to have a bad year. And so history would say it's a big season. But again, it's another year older. It's another injury. And I don't have a head coach I believe in. And I don't have an offensive line I believe in. And I don't have a running game I believe in. So those are all huge negatives going against Dak, even though history would say he's poised for a good year. I'll quickly tell you that I don't believe in their defense. Diggs is coming back from an ACL injury. We don't even know if he'll be ready for week 1. Will Micah Parsons even be there? And then, yes, Odigizua and Fowler can get after the passer, and they're solid players. but who else on defense jumps out at you as like
that defense, it doesn't scare you.
No, it
No
doesn't
doubt,
scare you.
especially without Micah. I mean, if they don't have
Yeah.
Micah, this is a very pedestrian defense.
So listen, they have winnable games. When you look at their schedule, you have the Giants twice, you have the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Jets. Those are all games that you as a Giants, as a Cowboys fan, should be able to circle and say, we should win those games. So you beat the Giants twice, you beat the Panthers, you beat the Cardinals, you beat the Raiders, you beat the Jets. Hey, we should be, if we win our the absolute must wins, a 6-win team, right? But you also have then the Lions, the Chiefs, Denver, Green Bay, Chargers, Eagles twice, Washington twice. So you, even if you win the games that you might be favored, and I'm not saying they're going to be favored against the Jets, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Panthers, the Giants, but you can at least look at that and go, we should compete. We should win those games. If you're a Cowboys fan, you have to win those games to have any chance of getting back to 7-10 with the tough schedule the way it is the rest of the way. And so I don't feel confident with Dallas getting to 7-10. I think they're more of a 6-win team. My gut tells me they're in that realm. And I just worry that with Mike McCarthy, he was able to coach it to 7-10. As much crap as we gave Mike McCarthy, he kept that thing going with a bad offensive line, no starting quarterback, no star running back. He got that thing to 7-10. You basically don't drastically improve the roster. Yes, you add a great wide receiver number 2, but you've pissed off your edge rusher, and you don't know if your cornerback number 1 is going to be healthy or available to start the season. Yeah. And you have a bigger question mark at head coach. Can you get to 7 wins? I don't know. I don't think so. Not with that schedule. I think it's going to be tough.
That's hard. It's hard for them. They are going to be competing with this next team, the New York Football Giants, for the bottom of the division. I firmly believe that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's get to the Giants. Also a fascinating team because they might have the best front four in football. It's crazy. Abdul Carter that they drafted, of course, early. You pair that with Brian Burns. You got Kayvon Thibodeau there. You've got Dexter Lawrence. I mean, these are studs. This is going to be a very difficult team to run against and certainly pass against as well. So they're going to be in more games this year. And they have a really solid, at this stage in his career, I don't mean it as much of a knock. He's a future Hall of Famer, but Russell Wilson, like a really steady force there. He's not going to make the mistakes that Daniel Jones made. So he's going to help keep you in more of the games too. But I don't know how much he elevates your situation right now. Hopefully he does, wonders for Malik Neighbors, who's already shaping up to be one of the top, 15 wide receivers in football. They've added offensive line help, but didn't do much in the draft. They just kind of got, veteran offensive line help to round out the depth. So I'm still really concerned about their offensive line health overall as a unit. Their skill players concern me. I mean, is Tyrone Tracy going to be the guy? He obviously played well at times last year as a rookie running back. Is he going to be the dude in the backfield? Don't feel super, super great about that. We'll see. And then really outside of Malik Neighbors, a lot of question marks there. So the offense is still kind of up in the air. And you've got Brian Daboll, who's probably just been sitting there going, man, I just want to get my guys in here so I can actually run my system. But at the end of the day too, we're going on, what is this going to be, year 4 with Daboll there in New York?
Year 5.
It's year 5. Like it's at a certain point, you got to put up or shut up. Now we'll see if Jackson Dart actually enters, at some point this season, but it's hard to envision the rookie overtaking Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston early on. So, it's a really hard team to evaluate. I think the defense is really solid, and I think they're going to be even better than they're projected to be with that front four. Like, I think it's going to be a top 8 defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
The
They're so
question is,
good.
can the offense even just get to the level of competency to where they can sustain enough and win 9 games, win maybe pushed for 10 in a wild card? That would be a dream for New York. I don't see them getting there, but I could see myself getting this team to 8 wins, projecting out. And that would be a huge win for them, obviously,
I
with
can't.
the turnaround from 3 wins just a year ago.
I don't know where you're finding 8 wins. I'd love to see it because, listen, Dan, this was a 3-win team last year. They have a coach whose seat is the hottest to start the year. He's got 3 QBs to choose from who are all very, very different. Obviously, the rookie Jackson Dart, and then you throw in Jameis and Russ. 3 very different quarterbacks with weird and different personalities. You have a running back battle that I think is going to be really interesting. I don't think I'm drafting either of these guys in my fantasy, or I'm drafting both late and I'm waiting for which one is going to become the guy. Tyrone Tracy Jr. showed promise, especially in the pass game late last year. But Scatabo out of Arizona State obviously was a prolific college back. Is he going to have the same success in the NFL? We'll wait and see. Obviously, you mentioned Malik Neighbors. They have a star number 1. And then it's a bunch of guys who are, you'd prefer them to be your 3 with, Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Little Jordan Humphrey. None of them are a 2, in my opinion. And then when you say that they're weak at tight end, they draft the rookie, but then you had Theo Johnson, who was unproductive last year. So you have a rookie tight end. You have no true wide receiver number 2. You have a running back room that's interesting, but I don't know if either of them are a bell cow back or someone who you're writing home to mom about. And then you have a quarterback room that I think has talent, but at all different levels of their career and at all very unique quarterbacks in their own right. So yeah, they're a very, very weak, weird team. Obviously the defense you talked about, it. The defensive line is great. You said maybe, listen,
Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to project them to win 8 games. I'm just saying I wouldn't be. It was more to illustrate the point that I wouldn't be surprised if when I was projecting out that I would have them having a significant turnaround.
That would be Dable. That would mean Dable and whoever, whether it's Russ, Jameis, or Dart, one of them and Dable click, and they go on a run that surprises people. And
or they could just win a lot of 1-score games because their defense is keeping
that defense. If
low.
that defensive line is healthy, you're absolutely right. But Dan, they start. Listen to this start.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's
at Washington, at Dallas, Kansas City Chargers.
Probably the worst start. I haven't seen all the starts. That's probably the worst, the hardest start in the
Dallas
NFL.
is the winnable game at Dallas. That's tough. Then you say to yourself, okay, if at best they're 1-3 going into week 5. I don't know who's on their week 5, but Dan, I wrote out week 6. Dan, New Orleans. Okay. So maybe they're 2-3, but then listen to week 6 through 12.
Yeah.
Philly, Denver, Philly, and that's at Denver. So home against Philly, at Denver, at Philly.
Yeah.
And then, don't worry, the Niners come to New York. And then you go to Chicago, which is then the winnable game in this scenario. And then don't worry, Green Bay and Detroit. Like that is that's brutal. That's
really hard.
And every one of those teams that I just mentioned circle you as their win. So can you find a way to be competitive and upset 2 of them? Even if you can, you're then 4-8? And I don't know what the final part of the schedule is, but that's Dable's done. Unless they're 4-8 and Jackson Dart is looking like an MVP, but they just can't win games. But they would be winning games because that defense is so good. If any of the quarterbacks are playing that well with Brian Dable for him to save his job, then they're winning games because that defensive line is so good.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be closer to 6-10 at the end of the day, but that would be the double their wins, the thing is there's the expectations are weird. You can't really expect this team to make the playoffs. You can't expect them. But turn the page, start to grow, show signs of life,
then maybe he keeps his job. Then
yeah,
maybe
and
Dable
maybe
keeps
he
his
keeps
job.
his job. And like you said, like Jackson Dart's got to get in there if they are just struggling a ton. Like if they are at the point where they're 3-6,
You play the rookie.
3-7, like you just throw them out there and you see what you got and you work with it, and hopefully you can find something that clicks there. All right, let's go to the AFC. We'll
AFC
start with
East.
Buffalo. I mean, they are the defending division champs, 13-4 last year. Really good. We all know this. Josh Allen playing at an MVP level all season long. They go out and they get Joey Bosa. They go out and they get Kendrick Green, who's just a backup guard. They get Elijah Moore, Josh Palmer, some nice kind of gadgety players. But this is another team that is really starved for that true number one wide receiver, which they haven't had since Stephon Diggs' departure. And despite all of that, despite having Keon Coleman as with Amari Cooper, of course, being your top targets last year, we're in it. You were in it, and that just shows how good Josh Allen is. Yeah. Imagine if they had a true number one wide receiver with this veteran Josh Allen, with this more matured and developed team. I think that could be something really interesting. So they're going to need Keon Coleman to take that big step forward next year and kind of reclaim or claim that top spot, I think. And we're going to need the Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore to really, become a quality number two. Next to Shakir, of course. Like Shakir's gonna be that guy that's that security blanket for Josh Allen throughout. So I think it could be interesting. I just did their offense get better? Technically, yes, but it was on the margins, right? And so I don't know how confident I feel, especially with Amari Cooper leaving. And so now it's like you really do need Keon Coleman to be the guy. You lose a lot of depth on your D-line this offseason. And of course, then they go and get Joey Bosa and they get, Larry Ogunjobi, some quality veterans there too. So I feel like, and they went hard on defense in their draft. So I think their defense is going to overall be better than it was last year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's encouraging for sure. But I still think that they need that true number one guy that Josh Allen can rely on. And so is Keon Coleman going to emerge as that? I think that's, for me, the biggest storyline that I'm looking for going into it. Defensively, with those improvements, I think that's going to help with those shootouts that Josh has had to just put on the Superman cape way too often. If you could just make him not have to do that for 4 games, 4 different games out of the year, then maybe we're talking about a 13-4 Buffalo team again, but a 13-4 team that's won a lot differently and maybe less tread on the tires for Josh Allen so that he can go into the postseason a little bit more refreshed and not having to be the hero every single time.
More tread on the tires.
What's that?
He has more tread on the tires because he's less used.
Oh yeah, more. Yes, more tread on the tires. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, less tread. So you nailed it. Listen, he was the MVP, 40 total touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, 3,700 yards passing, 500 yards rushing. James Cook is this underrated storyline right now. He's holding in.
Yeah,
he had 16 touchdowns, 1,000 yards. They need him. They need that running game. The offensive line is solid. It's not elite. The defense, listen, Ed Oliver, Matt Milano, you have Joey Bosa. There's a lot of
and Matt Milano was hurt for
the
majority of last year.
And so if names like Bosa, Oliver, Milano are healthy with that youth, I think it's a really fun and explosive unit. Listen, if you're Joey Bosa, this is the perfect place to go because naturally the team you're playing is going to be passing the ball because Josh Allen's going to be putting up points.
Pin your ears back a little bit.
Yeah, pin your ears back. So I'll say that's something to keep an eye on. The wide receiver room I'm shocked that Amari Cooper's still a free agent. I don't get Buffalo must have a reason why they didn't want to bring him back. Maybe they're hoping that The Keon
His
Coleman,
medical must not be good. Like
or
teams medical,
something.
yeah.
Because, obviously Keenan Allen just signed yesterday or today with the Chargers, like great trade, freaking
Yeah.
Ryan Poles. The pick that the Chargers used that the Bears gave up to get Keenan Allen, they used on Ladd McConkey. And now they get him back. And so Allen back. So I'll just quickly say this. Yeah, the wide receiver room is one to watch. They have Kincaid and Knox. They have a really great tight end room. There are no tough stretches in the schedule. I'll point out one stretch that I think is interesting, where it's like, hey, late in the season, they have a couple big games in a row, and so if they stumble through this, it'll hurt them. I think they'll be comfortable with their division, so I'm not too worried. But they do have to play Tampa, at Houston, at Pittsburgh, and then against Cincinnati at home. That's a tough 4-week stretch at weeks 11 through 14 when you're talking about November into December. Tampa, Houston, Pittsburgh, Cincy. Those are all teams we expect to be competing for the playoffs. Those are all teams that we expect to have that are top quarterbacks in the league. So that's an interesting stretch. It's not an easy one. If you can find a way to go 2-2 through that stretch, I think you're really happy as a Bills fan. Anything better than that is obviously gravy. And then, yes, they do play Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. But, Dan, they get all of those games at home.
Huge.
So the schedule gods smiled down upon Buffalo. That's their toughest stretch. It's not the toughest stretch. And that, yes, they play Kansas City, Philly, Baltimore. They're going to get a test against Super Bowl favorites, and they get that test at home. So if they're trying to secure a home field advantage for the playoffs, that is going to be two things to keep an eye out for. And obviously those games at home are going to be huge for them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point by you. They have an opportunity to like potentially go 15-2 this year if they play their cards right and if they hit gold with like a Keon Coleman or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it is so amenable to them. Where do you want to go next?
I'm going to Miami. Welcome to Miami.
Let's do it.
Listen, Tua only played in 11 games last year. They were 8-9. He wasn't great. 4 games missed because of the concussion. That reared its head again. It forced them to go out and sign Zach Wilson. And then they drafted Quinn Ewers, which I think was a smart pick because if you look at their quarterback room, all 3 of those guys are undersized, accurate, and are mobile enough. So what McDaniel has now in his room is he has in his quarterback room, if Tua goes down, guys who truly are plug and play that I would argue are great Tua imitators. Zach Wilson, I think, has maybe the biggest arm in that room. And certainly if Tua misses time, it'll be very interesting to see what Zach Wilson is like in a very offensive friendly system. Chan, obviously very good running back. He had over 1,400 total yards last year.
And then they've got Jalen Wright, who was, the
Yes.
rookie. Yeah, they've got interesting weapons.
So they do. When you add in, Hill seems disgruntled. There's some frustration with Hill in that room. Waddle obviously is quiet as can be and very talented. The wide receiver number 3, listen, they signed Westbrook Akine, who had 9 total touchdowns for Tennessee last year, but really
he had that run for like 6 straight weeks where
he had less than 500 yards receiving. So it was really truly just this kind of big red zone threat. But I think Mike McDaniel can use him. Listen, they get Darren Waller to come out of retirement. We don't know if he's going to be 100% ready to start, but it's interesting. Shaky O-line. I don't love the offensive line. The defense, Bradley Chubb, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I know that Zach Seiler, he had 10 sacks. He gets signed, but you draft
their
Kenneth
first round pick, Kenneth Grant. They're going to need him to be really
He's
good.
a mountain of a man, 6'3", 335. So there's names, but I don't. Again, Miami is one of those cursed franchises that it plays in Miami. So Do I expect Miami to win 15 games? I don't. Do I think Miami is going to be very fun at the start of the year as always? Yeah, because I think Mike McDaniel is a good coach. I think he's creative. He's clever. They have weapons. I think Tua's got a lot to prove this year as far as staying healthy. Second year after that big contract, if things go badly this year, they can really move on from Tua. The contract, the language in the contract becomes easier to move on from. Listen, schedule 1 through 5 is really favorable. Weeks 1 through 5, they could get off to a hot start. December, it gets a little tough, mainly because not the people they're playing, but where they're playing. In December, this Miami Dolphins team has to go to New York to play the Jets, a division rival. They have to go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Now they get Cincinnati, but at home, but that's still Joe Burrow and a team that I expect to be better than Miami. And then they get Tampa at home. But again, they get no advantage of the Florida Heat, and they're playing against a team that I expect to be better than them. And then, oh, great, they get to go at New England. So the 3 road games are going to be very winter cold. So even though they may be better than the Jets and better than New England, they got to play those 2 teams late in the year. That's tough. You're not better than Pittsburgh, and you're going to Pittsburgh. And then I don't think they're better than Cincy or Tampa. And so that is a really tough stretch in December into January for this Dolphins team. Now, granted, they do have tough games. I mentioned Cincy and Tampa. Washington, the Chargers, and Baltimore, 3 of their other toughest games. Those games are at home. So can they use that Miami Heat to their advantage in some of those games? Maybe, hopefully. But again, Dan, this team feels to me written like 8-9 all over again, even if Tua is healthy the whole year.
Yeah, that's tough because, like you said, he wasn't playing great, even despite the injury, and this team does seem to be relying much more now on its young, fast playmakers, versus, ideally running it through the quarterback. And so it's a big year for Tua. I think it's a big year for Mike McDaniel, though, too, because you can only use Tua as an excuse for so many years where, like, this is your guy, man. That's just how it works in the NFL. When you tie your hip to somebody, you're going to be held to account regardless of, who's to blame or this or that.
If Tua plays 16, 17 games, if he plays 16, 17 games and they're 8-9, you're right. That's then an indictment on Mike.
But even if he doesn't, I think at this point, okay, man, like, I get it. Your quarterback gets hurt, but after a certain amount of time, like, his record without Tua is atrocious. Like, they just don't win football games.
True.
And at a certain point, it's like, you got to find a way to win games, like, without saying, like, oh, but I didn't have my guy running my system. Well, okay, but, like, as a head coach, you have to find ways to pull out, like, tough, gritty wins, and that's been the struggle for Miami for many years, even before Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
But it's clearly been the story is that Mike McDaniel's teams they're not teams that overcome obstacles. They're teams that get out in front of you because they win with big flashy touchdowns or they get leads early, but they don't really win when they have to put their, hand in the dirt.
Totally.
And so I do think their offense signaled a little bit more of we're going to try and get bigger and more physical. And maybe part of that was getting, Minkah Fitzpatrick back to hopefully be like more of a tackle machine than they've had there. But they do lose, Jonnu Smith. They lose Jalen Ramsey. They lose Snoop Huntley. Like, a good quality backup is something you want to have when you have Tua as your quarterback. And so, yeah, there are questions about can they weather the storm, and that's really been the big sticking point for Miami since McDaniel's been the head coach.
I will say this: if Mike McDaniels gets fired, I think he will have a job immediately. Maybe not as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator. I think he's proven enough to be a capable, like
100%,
a hireable either head coach or offensive coordinator in this league. Like, he's got that down.
Yeah.
I just, Dan, Miami's starting to feel to me as we just watch more and more, a lot like a lot of teams, like a Cincinnati, like a Chicago, like a New York Jets, where it's like they're just never gonna win. Like they're just not. It's a franchise that has shaky ownership. It's in a city where they're just players are so distracted, and that anytime you have to win a big game in December and January, if you're on the road, it just seems like they're fucked. Like I know that's maybe not fair to say, but it seems like they're fucked. At least me as a Bears fan, I can go, listen, if I'm on the road in January at Green Bay or at, you know what I mean, Pittsburgh or whatever, like we deal with as bad a weather as you deal with. So
Yeah.
there should be no excuses. Miami has to host football games in January and February to win a Super Bowl. They have to. And this doesn't feel like a roster that's going to get ahead of a Bills team. So I think their ceiling is limited, but I think the coach can keep his job if he makes the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed. Year 4 for Mike McDaniel. So yeah, I think it's a big one for him. I think it's a big one for Tua. And
all right,
yeah, maybe they can find a way to squeak in.
Where are you going, Jets or Pats?
I want to go to the Patriots. I want to go to New England. I'm fascinated by this team. By the way, it was reported maybe right before we went on. I didn't even notice
with the bloody
Vrabel
face.
got into a scrum. Well, he didn't get into a scrum, but there was a scrum, and he inserted himself to probably try and break it up. He ended up getting like a bloody cheek afterwards. So like that's this very Vrabel story to come out of camp here in his first year as head coach of the New England Patriots. They won 4 games last year. We saw what we needed to see, I think, from Drake May. He's clearly a guy that you feel comfortable with going into this season here, year 2. This is a team that I expect to have. I don't know if I would say, you know what? I think this is the team I expect to see the biggest turnaround from last year to this year. Because 4 wins is such a low floor. And this is truly a team that
it got better.
Given their schedule, I can see them getting 8 wins out of this year with Drake May, with Mike Vrabel leading the way, with Will Campbell now, as their offensive tackle, Travion Henderson getting some valuable depth there in the backfield, which he may be the starting running back. Who knows if they're going to go with Ramondre Stevenson for the whole year. I thought they came away with a really solid draft. They didn't lose anybody that was a crushing loss. I mean, their center, David Andrews, really good center, but they brought in reinforcements there. They added a lot of veteran depth. Stephon Diggs, I don't know what we're going to get out of him, but I think he's going to be better than, certainly what they've had in the past. So I think Drake May at least has a guy that he can go to. They have other receivers there. They have great tight ends. I think year 2 for Drake May, and I think a stabilizing force in Mike Vrabel overall really steadies the ship for this team, and they're going to be gritty. The biggest concern for them is just roster overall. It just doesn't. It's not a very good roster, right? Overall, top to bottom, not a lot.
They need another draft and another year of free agency.
They do, but I think Mike Vrabel is going to be the difference maker enough to where he's going to get the most out of the guys they have.
Yeah.
They're going to play a good enough brand of football to where this team sticks in it. And Mark, their schedule is pretty easy, especially the middle part of their schedule where they're finally starting to hit their stride.
Dude, it's very
easy. Easily bank 4 wins from week 6 to week 9.
That's what I pointed out. Exactly.
Yeah. New Orleans, Tennessee, Cleveland, Atlanta. They could go 4-0 in that stretch.
Absolutely.
And that's already last year's win total. So can you eke out another 4 wins the rest of the schedule? It's tough. They end the season with a tough month. They begin the year with not the easiest slate either, which includes, 2 in-division road trips to Buffalo and Miami. But I think the middle of that schedule and then squeaking out some surprising wins here and there, and then grabbing a win against a Jets team late in the year or a Vegas early in the season already gets you to your 8 wins. I think this team could have that turnaround and really be well positioned for year 2 under Mike Vrabel and a year 3 with Drake May.
So You pointed out a lot of great things and a lot of positive things, and I'm with you 100%. I'm going to point out a couple things that concern me because I agree with you. The schedule, there's no death stretch. They have no death stretch.
Yeah.
Their tough games are at Baltimore, at Cincy, at Tampa. Those are their 3 toughest games. There's no Buffalo. Besides Buffalo, because they had to play Buffalo twice. So those are tough games. But besides that stretch we mentioned here, 6 through 9, at New Orleans, at Tennessee, Cleveland, Atlanta, which I think they could go 4-0 in that stretch. You also have Carolina and Vegas at home. So that to me is 6. There's if I'm circling it, I'm going 6 wins for the Patriots. So yes, already wrote the win total. Do they go much higher than that? Well, here's where I'm going to start to point out some of the concerns, right? Drake May did start 13 games last year. That's a large sample size. Now I get it, shaky, 1-year head coach. He's already on a second head coach. People aren't talking about that as much as they are with Caleb. I think it's more pronounced with Caleb because technically Caleb's on his 4th offensive coordinator. But for Drake May, he in 13 games, 15 touchdowns, only 2,200 yards, and 10 interceptions. Now, he was surprisingly a runner, 421 yards running and 2 rush touchdowns. But if you extrapolate that to 17 games, he's at 3,300 yards, 19 to 20 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. So I know a lot of people are expecting this giant pop from Drake May. And I do expect a step forward because I think there's stability and there's a man and there's a presence in the room with Vrabel. But Dan, Diggs is not practicing 100% yet. We don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. And beyond Diggs, the wide receivers are Demario Douglas, who's 5'8". He had 66 catches, 621 yards, and 3 touchdowns last year. 31-year-old Mac Hollins, who had 50 catches, 378 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And the rookie Kyle Williams, the 3rd rounder from Washington State, who I like a lot. And I watched some of his film, and so I was like, wait, Kyle Williams.
But Jalen Polk, they're going to need him to somehow step up because he was the rookie last year that had promise.
Yes.
Second-round pick. He's got to...
And you do have solid tight ends in Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. They're veterans, but they're solid, right? So they're playable. And you hope the offensive line is improved. Rookie Will Campbell, obviously a stud, short arms, but a stud. So I will say this. Christian Gonzalez, Robert Spillane, Jabril Peppers. The defense doesn't have pop names, but that's where you expect Vrabel to just, as a coach and a culture, as a defensive guy, to just make the defense better. We've already mentioned the schedule is not tough at all. It really isn't. They do have a rookie kicker from Miami who they drafted, Andy Borregales. That's concerning because Vrabel, what was one of the things that Vrabel haunted him in Tennessee? The kicker situation. Remember, he was going through a kicker a week. And so that scares me. You draft a rookie from Miami to go to New England. So that's just a little keep in your mind. So those are the concerns. But I will say overall, I'm with you. There's a lot to be positive about, mainly because of all 32 NFL teams, there's only 2 teams during this breakdown as we go through all 32 teams that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say they are purely better because of one man. That's Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. And I'll save my other one for later and when we get to it. But truly, one man makes the difference. I think Mike Vrabel's a home run. And I think he'll be the Patriots head coach for the next decade plus. And I think this is the start of something. The expectation is low. The schedule and you hope just the culture goes from 4 to 7, 4 to maybe 8. 6 wins. If there's 6 or less wins, then that's disappointing. And most likely injuries played a huge factor in that because the schedule is that favorable for them. I'll move now to the New York Football Jets.
Bring it home.
Okay. 5-12 last year. let's start with the quarterback, Justin Fields, entering season number 5. I love Justin Fields. We've done this song and dance. As long as we've done the show, we've talked about Justin Fields. I'm rooting for Justin Fields. I want Justin Fields to be the arc that we saw with Sam Darnold, with Baker Mayfield, getting the second to third chance and being like, wow, here we go. And he's going to be the starter now for the foreseeable future. Probably not a top 10 guy ever. Baker's kind of snuck into the top 10. But like, no, this is your guy. He's not the reason why you're losing. He's actually the reason why you're winning. You just got to build around him. But Dan, one of the biggest concerns with Justin Fields is he's never played more than 15 games in a season. If you take his overall total stats and you extrapolate that per season, on average, he averages 2,500 yards. He averages 61.1% completion percentage. He averages 11.25 touchdowns, 7.75 interceptions, and just under 2,000 yards passing in a season.
For a whole season.
11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, under 2,000 yards.
Lord.
Now, he does average 627 yards rushing, which is more than we talked about with Jayden Daniels. I mean, like, he is a rushing fiend and about 5 touchdowns rushing a season. So, and again, in all of those years, he's never played more than 15 games. So it's a little unfair to say this is what he averages in the season, but it's also like the numbers are the numbers, right? So if you're a Jets fan and you're expecting 3,300 yards passing, 800 yards rushing, starting 17 games, 20 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, I'm with you. I want that. I want that for you. I want that for Justin Fields. That is a Herculean ask, right? That is a Herculean ask for a guy who on day 1 of practice dislocated a toe. Like, he gets injured. And there's something about the dudes who are the ultimate in physical freaks that sometimes they just cannot stay healthy. Lamar Jackson's figured out a way. I think it's because they're slighter. Justin Fields is a thick, big athlete. He's built really like Saquon Barkley. If you line up Justin Fields and Saquon Barkley next to each other, I bet their stats pound for pound are very comparable. And if you looked at them just in their uniform, you'd be like, those dudes are just like very, very comparable. Justin's probably a little taller. Saquon's a little thicker. But Justin is not Lamar Jackson thin. He's not Jayden Daniels thin and kind of spindly fast. He is a physical, put a shoulder into you type of runner, but not 6'6" like Josh Allen. And so it's just different. I think that leads to the injury. So I just want to preface that. Jets fans, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for Justin Fields. I will always root for Justin Fields. I want him to succeed. But if you're looking for 20 passing touchdowns, starting 17 games and 10 rushing touchdowns, you're going to be bucking the trend if you're asking for that. All right, we move on. Weapons, obviously, the running back room, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, really, really strong. Garrett Wilson, great. After that, the weapons plummet. Like, you got 3 weapons.
Yeah.
And then it plummets.
Mason Taylor might be a dude.
Yes, second round out of LSU, big, strong, 6'5", 251. But again, I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know.
And Breece Hall had his injuries, so you need him to stay healthy.
So you hope that Mason Taylor pops. But then when you're looking at your wide receiver core beyond Garrett Wilson, Tyler Johnson, Josh Reynolds, Allen Lazard, none of those scream like star second option. And you really need wide receivers with Justin Fields to get separation that are at the spot, because Justin Fields is a spot thrower because he's moving so much. Solid offensive line, Vera Tucker, Membu, Fashanu, big names, solid offensive line. Defense, obviously loaded with stars. Noddy, Quentin Williams, Sauce Gardner, Will McDonald. He had 10.5 sacks last year. And then the schedule, Dan, it's tough. You know it. 0-4 start is very, very plausible. home against Pittsburgh, home against Buffalo, at Tampa, at Miami. Not the easiest start. It reeks of 0-4. And then when you look at the rest of the schedule, though, there are winnable games. I think if I'm a Jets fan, I'm circling these games as winnable games. Carolina, Cleveland, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, Dallas. So if you win those winnable games, that's 6 wins. Maybe you steal a game against Tampa or Miami, 7 wins. That's about the ceiling I see with this Jets team, and that's me building in the fact that I think Justin Fields is probably only going to play 15 games. You're going to see some Tyrod Taylor, maybe some Adrian Martinez. Do we believe in the rookie head coach? I think he's got promise, but again, question marks. But a lot like the other team in New York, a really good defense, and not the worst schedule in the world, even though you have to play Buffalo twice.
Yeah. It's a doable, workable schedule for them overall. I just really don't know at all what we're going to get out of Aaron Glenn as a head coach. And when you've got so much turnover, when you have a organization that's been as inept, he matters a lot more than if he was becoming the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers or, I would even argue, the New Orleans Saints or something like that, where there's like storage structure in place so you don't have to carry the entire load. He's carrying the entire load of a franchise that is fatigued, beaten down, really wanting something to work and wanting it to work quicker than what the Lions had to deal with when Dan Campbell came in. The Jets are much more starved for a quick turnaround because they've had that fruit dangled in front of them with the Aaron Rodgers signing, with several promising moments, the Zach Wilsons, and go down the line. So Aaron Glenn's got more pressure, and then you add in the New York market with it. I think he's a good coach for Justin Fields. Like, I think they're going to work really well together, and Justin's a great team guy. So if you're talking about like a bring the locker room together, having Justin there is a good.
And they signed Garrett Wilson, which was smart, right? Like, they got that out of the way. It's not drama. We signed him. He played college ball with Justin Fields. We also drafted another young wide receiver from Ohio State who's got ties to Justin Fields. Like, you're right. Like, they've done the right things. It just does feel like there's a cap.
Yeah. And there's going to be growing pains. I mean, Dan Campbell and company, they won a game, like
with Jared Goff. And everyone was saying, bench Goff. He's terrible.
They needed the turnaround to happen over it. They needed 2 solid years to put it together.
And then they've had 2 very good winning years. And now it's like, yeah. So can I ask you one question with the Jets? In 1 year from now, are we talking about Justin Fields as the starter and we're confident that he's the starter?
I would say yes.
Okay.
But if I'm like on that scale, I'm probably at like the 58% mark, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm definitely leaning yes. And part of that too is because they did sign him to that 2-year deal. They gave him a little bit more guaranteed money than
I thought it was a 3-year deal.
Yielding or 3-year deal.
Because Pittsburgh wanted him at 2, but he wanted 3 and the extra money.
Yeah. So, I think that they're committed to building something with him. Obviously, they hope that he, becomes the guy. I don't think he's going to be in their long-term plans unless they really see something great from him. But yes, I think this is the stable year for this team.
Yeah.
Hey, let's stabilize at 6 wins, 7 wins. Let's see some improvement. Let's get there. Let's see some positivity, and then hope that we get to 8 wins next year, 9 wins, and really begin to build this thing.
Yeah.
It's a young team overall. I think they do have a lot of promise with a lot of young skill players and great talent. But yeah, it's gonna be it's going to be, does Aaron Glenn provide the, leadership that this market needs and that this franchise needs? And does Justin Fields you really finally get his opportunity for the fresh start? Because he didn't really get that opportunity with Pittsburgh, despite having, those 6 games. So really this is like the first fresh start of going into a year feeling confident that he's the guy, knowing that they're going to build around him since even going into his final year with Chicago, because it seemed like the writing was on the wall at that point.
Totally.
Anyways, so yeah, big year for Justin. A lot of question marks. I don't think we're going to be surprised if this team does finish dead last in the division once again, though.
Dude, talking ball. It's so much fun. This was great. This is what the show's all about for us. It's like
Hour
therapeutic.
35.
I will say, starting with the East was fun because we might have just talked about the Super Bowl matchup with Buffalo and Philadelphia. You know what I mean? Like it's the East is in both conferences is going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye out for this year. And hopefully everyone enjoyed that. And again, if you're a fan of any of these teams and you got some strong thoughts, sound off in the comments, reach out to us on Twitter, send DMs on Facebook, whatever it is. We'd love to hash it out with you. And otherwise, this is it for the until we get to real football. We'll another division next week, and we'll keep counting them down, Dan.
Yeah, we're gonna go with the AFC and NFC South next week, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, really exciting to talk ball once again and kind of do these previews.
Not as many Super Bowl contenders in the AFC.
Yes,
and NFC South.
Definitely not as many Super Bowl contenders on that side of things, but some interesting storylines definitely talk about, Mark. I'm really interested.
The quarterbacks in the AFC South.
Yeah, I mean that. What are the Titans going to do? What is Jacksonville going to take the much needed step forward that they've needed for several years?
Indy on their first depth chart listed Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson Sr.
That's amazing. Let's go. I'm here for it. All right, we'll see you back here next week for the NFC and AFC South. But until then, enjoy the week ahead. Enjoy some preseason football this upcoming weekend. And we'll see you back here next week.